Chap's got Sean. Sean read your story on the old local rags East Anglia. You're
Mhm.
one of those ex-forces, so let's just stereotype you as a squaddy.
Yeah.
You left it, got started dabbling into the naughty, started DJing, doing the drugs, doing the drinking, typical squaddy story.
Yeah, exactly.
But the one thing I like about your story, and obviously I have to do my due diligence of just doing the whole stalky, make sure you're not some weirdos to protect the charity and the people we serve.
Fair enough.
I was
Yeah.
like, mate, you've spun your story around. You've spun your life around, mate. I know you're a fitness coach now, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. The irony is as well, I'm actually based out here in Ibiza as well in the winter. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's quite ironic that I've come from an addiction to now sober living in Ibiza for the winter. So
How do you deal with the boredom on that one?
well, that's what I love about
Yeah.
it.
Just so tell us about yourself because I know you're in, excuse me. I know he's in the forces and you lost your way.
Mm.
What happened there?
So I mean, it happened actually much younger age than that. I think. I was brought up. My dad left. My mum was an alcoholic. We come from very low income background in the
Yeah.
north of England. And started drinking at a very early age. And obviously seeing my mum go through the problems that she did with her alcohol, drinking sort of patterned off to me a little bit, So I was already quite troubled in terms of my drinking
Yeah.
from an early age. So as I got older and then joined, there wasn't too many problems with it. But when I joined the military, even then I was never a good drunk. So I yeah, I spent 4 years in the military, did a tour of Afghanistan, come out, and then after some time ended up DJing. And because of my background of of always being a bad drunk and having quite an addictive personality, part and parcel of the music industry is drugs. It's the drugs and party, and every single gig you play, you sort of expected to be having a party with them, aren't you? Because they're
What
paid
what
for you to
what
come.
what did you used to mix?
House. Yeah, I was a house DJ.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I
Yeah.
was hardcore, so I was a grosser one.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, I lived in Berlin as well for 4 years, so there was some pretty chunky parties there, that's for sure. But
I've DJed a couple of free parties over there, and they were just. And I was saying that, like, especially in Berlin and whatever else in Belgium, it's just you are expected to do whatever's given to you, aren't you?
yeah, well, in Berlin, that was it. I lived in London actually. My first residency was at Egg at London, and that's where it all started to take off. And we were
Yeah.
playing there, twice a weekend, and it was all new to me in terms of like the not the part, not so much the drinking, the party scene, but just the free. Everything was free. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I took full advantage of that, and the first 2 years of coming out of the back of a fitness industry, military fitness, and then going into the music industry. Slowly, my physical health started to deteriorate, along with my mental health. And after 4 years in London, we got picked up by Watergate in Berlin, and they put us on as a resident there. So we moved to Berlin, but I'd already had a pretty bad cocaine addiction at this point, and drinking problems were, also hand in hand. I mean, because that's how it starts. You never go and have a line and then a drink. It's never that way around. So.
Yeah.
So it was more a drinking problem than anything, because that would always instigate it. But then when the cocaine happened, then that would be 3-4 days. And the problem is in Berlin is that places don't close until like 3 or 4 days. So you can
Yeah.
find yourself very easily after your gig, and the sets are always very long there. End up staying, for the whole weekend. And this just sort of spiraled out of control. It was affecting a lot more than what I, realized when I was in the thick of it, because of addiction. You're so blind to everything else around you. It's just like that. And I was falling out with, friends, family, my brother who I DJed with. We weren't getting along. I was getting kicked off of agencies left, right, and center. I was spending all my money on drugs, basically, and partying.
Yeah.
And yeah, it got to a point where, like, mentally, I was in the worst place I'd ever been. I couldn't. There was occasions where I was like, I'd be sat in the studio on my own after 3 days, just being up, claiming to make music, but I was just doing drugs in there, and then ended up ringing, my mom or something, crying my eyes out, saying, I've had enough, and yeah, it got quite deep, but fortunately, which again, it sounds mad saying this, but fortunately for me, when COVID happened, that was when all my gigs stopped. So that sort of that I had to then, there was no clubs to go to and party in the studio. My money was running dry, so I had to get a job. And the only job that was available for a non-German speaker in Germany, in Berlin at the time, was Amazon. Just packing the boxes and whatnot. And I mean, I was already doing night shifts anyway from just partying all the time, so that didn't really faze me. But what it did is it allowed me the opportunity to start getting in some routine again. And I hadn't worked out for 6 years, nothing serious anyway, and I hadn't really looked at my nutrition for a long time, and I was getting severe anxiety. What this did is it gave me a routine again, and then I started to work out a little bit more again. And that was tough, especially because my ego was so big. I thought I was going to go and do my first run, and it would be like when I was back in my military days. But no, I was very disappointed. But I stuck at it. I started looking after my health again, and my eating right, and slowly things started to change. I was losing weight, I was sleeping better, and this all helped me mentally as well then, because I think your physical, mental health, from what I've experienced, do have a big part to play in it. And then I started getting sober. I stopped doing the drugs. There was a lot of relapses at the time, but I was able to save some money, and then we wanted to move back to England. It was 4 years in Berlin, and hadn't been home for 2 years because of COVID. So it was it was time. And in July I moved back. But at this time, the clubs had all started to open again. So we got approached by a new agency, and I think the addict inside of me was still calling me back to this, this party life and this DJ life, even though I know. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that's one of the things that I think I've said it to my wife. She was just like, "Do you miss DJing?" I was like, on one hand, I do, even though that's life. What basically, it's like when you got a whole dance floor up to a point shouting your name, and you can, I was going to say turn them on, but when you get that drop.
Yeah, there's something about it. Yeah.
The reason it's just when you feel like an overlord, don't you? It's just so powerful. Like you can make or break people's nights.
Yeah.
By one drop. It's just so powerful. But the thing is, when I stopped DJing because I got a tumor in my neck.
Okay.
So I was kind of forced that they basically cut my head off to get out of it and all this kind of stuff. But then I realized I got incredibly depressed and lonely because my phone stopped ringing. I didn't get people who was like, "Oh, do you want a lift on Saturday night? Are you gigging? Do you want a lift?
Can I get gas lift?"
Yeah. And you feel like a mini god, don't you? Like everybody wants you.
Yeah.
And then it stops.
Yeah. I think it's funny you say that, because that's one thing that I noticed at first, that when you're in that party scene, it seems like, what you say, like everyone's sort of with you and that. But what I realized when it stopped is actually I was very lonely at the time. You know what I mean? Yeah. When I was in the industry, because that's all you were there for, is just a party. And once that shut off, that was it. There's no support network. And like now the business that I'm running, that's sort of, I mean, I'll come back to the story in a minute, but that is the reason why I set it up, because there is no support network, you know, in the music industry for people that are struggling with, you know, mental and physical health problems and drug problems. And, you know, for me, it got really bad. You know, if it wasn't for COVID forcing me into this normal routine and this job again and allowing me to start to work on myself, then I wouldn't have been able to push forward. But still, when we moved back to England, we had a line of gigs started to roll back in again, and we had like a tour of Australia planned, which was the tour that got cancelled before COVID. And me and I was in such a better place physically and mentally now, you know, and I got a job in England, but there was something holding me back. Like even me and my brother, I remember when we moved back, we went to Bournemouth for the day, and my agent rang me. He's like, "Oh, I've got you the tour of Australia." It was like four gigs in New Zealand, 4 in Australia, and I was like, "Yes, we're going to do it."
Yeah.
But Liam, my brother, he was already had enough. Like he'd obviously seen the positive, you know, effect that not partying and being in the scene that we'd been in for 8 years had. So he was like, "No," we had this big argument, and I was like, "Look, I'm going to do these gigs." I think we had one up north in Hull. It was the first one back. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it sober, yeah? Wow. And I will do all the gigs sober. So I got to the gig. Liam didn't come with me. Did it. No, I'm not drinking tonight. Not drinking. And then it was like, you know what? I'll just have one. I'll have one. It'll be all right. And then next thing I know, I ended up in hospital, and I got this scar on my head here. I woke up in hospital, and I honestly have no idea what happened. I remember, like, you know, I ended up getting on the gear and drinking and going to an after party, but somehow I ended up hospital. Apparently the police brought me in. I didn't remember any of it. You know, it was a disaster. Checked my bank balance. I pretty much spent all the money, you know, from the gig.
That's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, well, because it's just like, what's the point anyway? And then I ended up ringing my dad, and I was just in bits. And I said to him, I was like, "That's it." So Liam, like, I rang him and I said, "Yeah, that's it. We're quitting." So I quit music. You know, my agent at the time was Paul James, mate. He was not happy at all because obviously he'd had 2 years with no money, and then I just cancelled about 14 gigs lined up for him. So, but that's the decision we made. But then I started to then, you know, I was working in a school. I got a job as a PE teacher in England, and there was a couple of relapses along the way, but it was controlled. But mentally and physically, I was feeling great, and I started to post some of this up on social media. And because I was known in the industry for being, like, in my scene for being a party boy and always having a drama, and you know, that's what I was known for. So when people seen that I was making this positive change in my life with my mental and physical health, people started reaching out to me, you know, and they started asking for advice. And because before music, I was, you know, I qualified as a personal trainer, I was young, and I was a soldier. I started to help these people, and then more and more people started to reach out, and it's turned into, you know, a global fitness business, working with, you know, people in 14 countries now. You know, I'm based over here in Ibiza. I've got some of my clients over here are residents at High and Ushuaia, so some of the biggest clubs in the world. And now it's become this, and I'm trying to build it for this community of busy creatives and music industry people, especially DJs, a platform where they can look after themselves and get in the best shape they want and be the strongest mentally they can be while still getting on with their career from the mistakes that I made in mine. Because I know full well that if I had gone back into the music industry with the headspace that I'm in now, I would have been far more successful. But the problem is I could never do that now, just because of the addiction that I got from when I was in it. As every time I go back and I'd have one gig, I know I would end up just getting on it.
I have to agree with you, because I've not so much now. Now I'm pretty much old and forgotten now. But it's just every now and again, you know, it's like on Facebook, you get one of the old days. Like, let's restart that night. Let's get everybody back in. But trouble is, it's just I don't think my head. I'm like, let's do one final gig.
Yeah.
I just know that's it. The alcohol, I'm not bothered about the alcohol. I still like the odd bit. I've never really been a massive drinker.
Okay, yeah.
Coke.
Yeah, well, that's the dangerous stuff as well, isn't it? You know,
exactly. Yeah,
but that's
game over.
But that's what I get. I get so many messages all the time, because a lot of people still follow because now it's Willer's Fitness. It was Willer's Brothers. Like, a lot of people still follow my journey from when I was a DJ. So I get messages all the time. People, like, when I put a track on a video, they're like, track ID and oh, when are you going to do a comeback, or when are you making music again? I'm like, guys, mate, I'm done. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you want some help with your fitness, let me know. But I ain't going back to that, you know.
No. Good on you for getting to that stage. And I think that's one of the things what we say quite prominent for MANUP is actually to deal with your mental health, to learn to live with mental health.
Yeah.
I will say off air, it's just, even now, even though my son's in the other room, hopefully he can't hear me, he'll probably watch it. If somebody put a line in front of me, I'll be like, absolutely not. But that I know there'll be that little thing of just like,
yeah, maybe just one little bit.
It's just that little thing. But I think we have to make, if you want to sort your life out, I'm going to be quite harsh on my words, but sometimes with mental health, even addiction, drink, drugs, doesn't matter what else, we will live with that clucking sometimes for the rest of our life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for us to live with it rather than suffer from or chasing whatever else, we have to go, we've got to cut that out of our life.
Yeah, I love that so much. It's giving me goosebumps. You said that actually.
But it's hard. It's hard though, isn't it? And
it's so true, because it like I'm always like all the time. You know, it gets close to Thursday, Friday, every single week. Like even it's Friday night tonight, and I'm, you know, in my head I'm thinking, oh, I'd love a couple of lines, but you just have to, like you said, you have to realize the damage that that's going to cause, and for that instant gratification, that, you know, that couple of hours, because it's only the first couple of lines anyway, they are going to be amazing, because it always is, but the aftermath is not worth it. And just, I think if you focus a lot more on working on your mental and physical health day in, day out, then you're having 7 days of just a nice time, rather than just that one peak on the weekend and then just absolute calm down for 3 or 4 days where, you know, it's just absolutely awful, you know. And I think that's you know, that takes time, and it takes a lot of work, but it's worth it in the end, you know.
So would you say COVID did a good thing for you?
It's honestly, it was the best thing that could have happened to me, because without that break in the music industry, I would have never been given the chance to have a break that I needed, and sort of start my own journey. Do you know what I mean? Like it wouldn't have given me time, because I needed the gigs every week anyway for my income. So I wouldn't have been able to take the time off, and I didn't have any savings because it all went up my nose. So, it was a lifesaver for me, because if not, like where I would be now would be in a very, very different situation, you know, and it wouldn't have been a nice one. So.
No, exactly. And I've always joked about it. One of the best things I had was getting hit by a lorry, because that's when they found the tumor.
Okay, yeah,
it's weird, isn't it?
Crazy, you know. Yeah,
but literally, what saved my life was getting hit by a lorry.
Yeah,
off a motorbike. It was just the most. It just sounds mental, doesn't it? But that's. But
again, Daniel, I think sometimes things like this happen, and you know, so you can sort of create other paths and help other people along with their journeys. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm not saying by all means that the whole music industry has to stop drinking and doing drugs, but you know, you do have to look after your health and, you know, mental health if you want to, I think, see the distance through it. Do you know what I mean? And not only that, just enjoy life on a day-to-day basis, because there is so much, you know, this is cheesy, but there is so much beauty in life. Do you know what I mean? That I didn't really see at all when I was just getting messed up every weekend. So.
No, exactly, I agree with you. So just before we draw to a close, then there's that little cue of let's call it a day. But if someone's watching this, let's face it, there might be some people like laughing about it and probably thinking, "Oh yeah, I won't mind the line."
Yeah, Friday night.
it is literally a Friday night, isn't it? Obviously, I might not upload it tonight because
but still,
If someone's watching this and they're in that hole, you've been there, I've been there, where just you love DJing, everyone thinks you're absolutely awesome, blah blah, and you can't get out. What would you say?
I mean, first of all, if you're in that hole, I think first of all you need to take a break. If that's not possible, then definitely by applying these 3 foundations that work for me, and one of them is to start exercise. Doesn't matter what it is, but just start doing some exercise on a daily basis. Start eating, more whole foods and less processed food, because that really does affect your brain if you're eating junk food all the time. It's called junk food because that's how it makes you feel. And the third one, which is like a little off key, but this helped me so much, and it was starting intermittent fasting, because what intermittent fasting creates is it creates this discipline, and it starts to empower you and make you realize that you're in control. And that's a lot of the time what I found, especially through addiction, that I felt I wasn't in control. I wasn't in control of my feelings or my emotions, and I was using all the time to sort of mask that. But when I started intermittent fasting and going for these longer periods of time without food that I was choosing not to do for health benefits, I was like, well, actually, I am in control. I have got discipline. Like, I am in charge here. And then I was able to use that when it comes to thinking about, my addiction, and all that combined starts making you think much more positively, and you start to see, the world in a different light, and see, and see it for what it really is. So that's what I would say.
No, that was a good response. That was a good one. So hopefully somebody will be watching this and I said, do you know what? Let's just give it a go. And I think it's just, it's just another one of those things where with Man Up, I always ask what people do, because I do fast from time to time, not really for my mental health, just stop me getting fat. And just so I can, I guess it is a little bit of control, but at the end of the day, there'll be someone watching this probably saying, I would never want to, or try that, it's not worked for them. Actually, if it works for you, then it's not wrong.
Yeah, it's true. So true.
Do you get what I mean? And that's what we try and push quite heavily through Man Up, with just like find something what works for you, as long as it's legal within reason. Wild camping, don't worry about that. Go out wild camping because it works. I love wild camping, but if it works for you, it's not wrong.
Yeah,
and it's better. It's just better than sitting on your ass at home moping, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think another thing is to take it one day at a time as well. That's another thing, you know what I mean? Like, it's just it's not perfect every day, and I think it's just by applying some sort of foundation that you can try again the next day to stop you from going, completely off the rails. Do you know what I mean? So
absolutely. That was a good call, mate.
Yeah.
Let me hit the call button. Bear me 1 second. Where are we? I couldn't find it earlier. Now I've got to find it again, haven't I? Where are we?